Hi, FRC fam! We're back for another episode this month. Again, this is Chai.
And rap.
Yes, ayan. Rap, anong month ngayon?
Today is June.
Yes.
June.
Anong meron sa June?
June is the
Quiz.
Sacred Heart devotion month, di ba?
Yes, that's true, Rap. But you know, to our LGBTQIA plus community members, it is actually a very important month for them because it is Pride Month. And I think this is going to be a very interesting and exciting episode for all of us here, our FRC fam out there na nanonood. Kasi I think FRC, it's about time for us to contribute to that conversation. Join in the conversation, hear the stories, and understand what's happening outside.
Yes.
Diba? So it's very interesting.
We understand that it's a very sensitive topic and yet so relevant these days. So we want to tackle this, of course, in the context of being Catholics and being in our families as well. Excited na ba kayo?
Yes, ako sobrang excited na. And of course, hindi lang kami ni Rap ang magkasama today because we have a very fun and exciting guest that we have today.
So di na namin papatagalin pa. Joining us for our month's episode is none other than Edwin Valles, the President of Courage Philippines.
Yes! Hi,
Welcome,
Edwin!
Hi, Chai. Hi,
Edwin.
Rap. I'm happy to be here. No? So, I thank you for inviting me to be part of the conversation. No? So, among the FRC family on things LGBT. So,
We are so excited to have you here. Thank you sa pagpapaunlak sa amin.
Yes.
Dadagdagan ko na rin yung introduction natin sa ating guest for today kasi medyo bigatin yung guest natin ngayon.
I know.
I was looking at our credentials. So, Edwin, right now you're a marketer by profession, but you also hold a master's in theology.
Correct,
That's
yes,
interesting. He teaches pastoral accompaniment of LGBT to seminaries, particularly in San Carlos. Sino yung mga audience mo doon sa San Carlos?
usually, yung program that we offer is for fourth-year theologians. So, sila yung before mag-graduate, about to be ordained. So, yung mga ganon. So, yung last year nila, puro pastoral topics na yun. No? So, it was nice of San Carlos to give us that. No? So, it's about 1 week. It's like a modular course lang naman. No? Mga 4 days. No? So,
He is also a part-time professor in CSB, part-time professor of theology, and an active speaker of the CBCP Episcopal Commission on Family and Life in Homosexuality and Chastity. These are a lot of topics, no? And if you actually want to check more of Edwin's content out, he also has a podcast on YouTube. This is the Be Not Afraid podcast produced by CBCP Media, which seeks to listen to stories of LGBT persons journeying in their Catholic faith. O, diba? Sabi sa inyo, bigatin.
Bigating. And very knowledgeable. As you
Yes.
mentioned, very interesting yung mga na-mention natin part ng credentials ni Edwin. So, we thank you again for guesting and
thank you for inviting me.
Oh.
Yes.
Just understanding a lot of your involvements right now. So we mentioned a lot of involvements in terms of pastoring LGBTQIA persons in the context of our Catholic faith. So can you share a bit on how you have come to be involved, particularly in that area of mission?
So I've been a Catholic all my life. No? So cradle Catholic, I went to an all-boys Catholic school. But I've experienced same-sex attraction. So as far back as I can remember. So this has been a constant struggle of mine for many, many years. No? So especially most of my adult life. But I think in 2014, I had the blessing of being introduced to Courage. No? So Courage is the Catholic apostolate for LGBT persons. No? So it's like a spiritual support group. No? So I think the first time I joined Courage, parang I felt deep inside me na ito na yun. No? So this is parang siguro the resolution of the tension that I had with my powerful same-sex attraction, as well as my value or how important my Catholic faith is in my life. No? So somehow, I don't know, parang I felt, parang I would always describe my Courage experience as my unity of life. No? So parang it's like, parang from that point onwards, parang who I was, what I've done, parang meet with parang what I want to do, what the church needs, what God wants me to do, something like that. No? So parang nandun siya, nag-converge siya doon. No? So I joined Courage not because I wanted to evangelize or I wanted to help others, but because it was really more out of my personal need. Parang siguro to to enlighten my own journey, to know more about how I reconcile my homosexual attractions and experiences with my Catholic faith. No? So yun yung start, no? So, but because as you go through, as you receive the support, as you siguro parang bask in the mercy of God, diba? So I suppose yung natural progression nun will be parang to let it flow to others as well. No? I joined 2014, 2016 I became the president, and tamang-tama naman yung chairman ng Episcopal Commission on Family and Life, si Archbishop Gilbert Carcera, was parang discerning rin, parang how best to accompany LGBT person. Things just fell into place, no, so to speak.
It's like a perfect
Yeah.
timing.
Yeah.
Everything, no? If you don't mind me asking, because this is also the first time that I've heard of Courage, maybe you can just give a brief background on what it is to our viewers.
So Courage was established in the US, no? It's an international organization ng 1980. So yung bit of a context, no? So yung late 70s, early 80s in the US was like parang the main issue then was HIV/AIDS, no? So when yun yung parang bumulusok yung cases no. So in fact, when it first started to appear, the medical community thought it was gay cancer, no? So kasi it seems to be affecting the gay population in the US. And then there were two ground zeros in US, no? So New York and San Francisco. So at the time, the Archbishop of New York discerned that he wanted to provide a support group for the gay members of his archdiocese. So he invited the priest, si Father John Harvey, to start Courage, no? So 1980 yon. So yun, and then in 1995, the late Jaime Cardinal Sin discerned also that he also wants to provide such accompaniment group. So yun, Courage Philippines started in 1995. So
But it grew over the years. That I think that's and we have our own group here in the Philippines.
correct. Yes. So sa NCR, there's the Manila chapter, ARCAM, and also Parañaque chapter.
Okay.
Sana sa Cubao rin magkaroon. Bishop Nessa.
Shoutout.
Yeah, but okay, you mentioned earlier about the attraction. I just wanna dissect that a little bit.
Sure.
In the Courage organization, are you not allowed to have that attraction?
Una, the attraction is there, no? So I
Yeah.
mean, it's parang almost parang impulsive or natural, or parang spontaneous. Let's put it that way, no? But parang siguro yung what Courage promotes, no? So it's also what the Catholic Church teaches, no? So which is chastity, no? So yung virtue of chastity, as any virtue, you have to journey through it, no? So I mean, it's not as if you join Courage, suddenly wala nang homosexual attraction or wala nang homosexual action, no? So you have to journey through it, no? So you have to grow in the virtue of chastity, no? So, and I suppose in any journey, it's always fun to have it with other people, no? Parang journeying with you. So I suppose that's what Courage offers. Siyempre, chastity is only one of the 5 goals. There's also prayer and dedication. Siyempre, as a spiritual support group, we help each other to deepen our relationship with Christ, no? So, and then there's also fellowship, there's also support, and there's also good example. So yung good example is like, parang all of us are called to become witnesses or evangelizers in our own respective way.
So tama ba? By organization, is it something that you just sign up for? I want to be part of.
So my personal experience, so it was my spiritual director who made it known to me that there was such a group, no? So I attended my annual retreat, and then in spiritual direction, sabi niya sa akin,
Spiritual director from
Opus Dei. So yeah.
Okay.
So I would attend kasi yung annual retreat with them, eh, no? So and then kasi silent retreat yun, the only time you get to speak was in one-on-one spiritual direction. And I've been journeying with this priest about my homosexual attraction, no? So sabi niya, maybe you need a support group, no? So sabi, mayroon pa ng support group. I didn't know, no? So this was already 2014, 1995 pa yung Courage. Hindi ko alam na parang meron pa lang support group, no? So yun, so okay, action point from the retreat, look for Courage. So, yun. So it was January, February, I reached out to Courage, and then parang very meaningful sa akin yung first meeting ko in Courage kasi it happened on February 14, Valentine's Day, on 2014. No? So 2/14, no? So yeah.
That's very nice, no? Kasi we're able to see just getting perspective on what Courage is. I think it's very symbolic on why it's also named as Courage.
Correct.
Like to actually approach the organization, the community, like I need guidance and also that acceptance of yourself. And I think sa LGBTQIA plus community, it's very important, the sense of
Yes.
acceptance.
Tama.
Diba?
Oo.
Kasi it's acceptance of yourself and your own journey towards that individuality that you're getting yourself
Yes.
into.
Tama.
Yeah.
And maybe some for those who are
Hopefully here,
watching
no? So,
our episode for this month. So I believe courage is easily searchable, as you mentioned naman sa social media. So if any of you FRC fam are interested to check this organization out, we'll have the links also available sa aming episodes. Yan. Sige, may iba tayo, Edwin, ano? I think that's already a lot of things that we've been talking
Covered,
about. I
yes.
think mainly on courage. But just to also go back to your own journey of discovering who you are, as you mentioned. Maybe, of course, it's something that a lot of our FRC fam can learn from and have some takeaways from. Siguro yung main question is just how did you navigate learning who you are in terms of your sexuality?
sige, so a
your identity.
condensed version of my 50 years journey. So, as I said, no, bata pa lang ako, I remember I would have siguro attraction to men, no? So, in that all-boys school, siguro mga grade 4, grade 5, grade 6, I felt I was already different, no? So, and then nung high school, talaga nag-flourish, no? So, I mean, at least in the Catholic all-boys school that I went to, para kaming mga queens. So, sa mga
Yes.
mga mean girls kami doon sa... No, I speak for myself. No? I would imagine for different people, it will be a different experience. No? So,
Yeah.
from first year up to fourth year, pare-pare yung classmates ko, but I never had friends with... I was never friends with them. No? So, wala akong paki sa kanila because I enjoyed my gay friends, no, who are in other classes. No? So, in fourth year, parang in a retreat, no, so in a typical Catholic school, no, so it was a retreat, there was sharing, di ba, as usual, no, so nag-share ako na parang in-anticipate ko na my classmates will attack me from being gay, no, so sabi ko parang pasensya na kayo if I'm gay, this is the only parang way I know how to have fun, So instead of them judging me, parang I was surprised that their reaction to me was, Edwin, even if you're gay, we respect you. Even if you're gay, parang you're different, parang you're respect. So something like that. So very positive yung reaction nila to me na parang hindi ko dun sa in-expect ko na ibubuli nila ako or they will judge me. No? So since then, I started to befriend them. So I think for the very first time in my life, I felt accepted in the world of men. No? So I think it was an important journey of every boy, no, to have that sense of being welcome in the world of men. In that particular moment, I felt that. Interestingly enough, 2 or 3 months after that retreat, I had the desire to change, no. So parang sabi ko, pagdating ko sa college, magpapakalalaki na ako, no. So
Yeah.
but parang, and this was circa 1990s. No? So iba yung situation now, no. So at that time, parang I was choosing to do that for practical reasons. So sabi ko, I know I'm intelligent, I know I'm talented. When I work, I don't want na parang people will judge me because I'm gay without knowing my abilities and my capabilities. No? So sabi ko, parang I will become a man para level playing field. No? So parang very practical reasons. So when I went to college, ganon. So I was trying to become a man, but at the same time, nagiging powerful more and more powerful yung attraction ko towards the same sex. No? So, and then it was also in college that I had my very first homosexual encounter, no? So, as an adult. Tapos yun, dire-diretso na siya. So, parang it was a series of casual promiscuous sex, no? So with various men. No? So since then, no? So I think from 18 up to mga early 20s, para I would go on a depressive cycle. No? So kasi hindi ko ma-reconcile na I have the best intention to become a man. No? So, I wanted to become straight, I wanted to become heterosexual, but how come I continue to experience this homosexual attraction? So, parang hindi ko ma-reconcile. Parang sabi ko kay God, maganda naman ang desire ko, bakit hindi mo siya binibigay sa akin? But why do I continue to experience yung powerful homosexual attraction? And in fact, I will act on them. No? So, ayun, so depressive, as in parang monthly, parang sinasabi ko nga sa mga friends ko, para akong nireregla. I mean, it's like my own version of menstruation because it was very cyclical that way, no? So, And then, parang umabot dun sa, parang it got so bad. Siyempre pa, if you feel depressed, you tend to ruminate, di ba? You tend to dwell on the negative feelings. It came to a point na nagka-sense sa akin why some people will decide to end their life, no? Parang kasi parang feeling ko, at that time, no? Parang this is like a vicious cycle. Paulit-ulit na tong negative feeling na to, no? Parang na hindi ko siya nakikita how it will be resolved, no? So, thankfully, no? So, parang I was blessed with sufficient mental health, no? So, when nung dumating yung sa akin yung idea na yun, sabi ko, teka, parang hindi na maganda itong iniisip ko, no? So, step back. No? So, from there, eventually, para after a few years, parang to hell with this. No? Bakit ko ba pinahihirapan sa sarili ko? So, might as well celebrate who I am, no? So, there was parang a time in my life na, like now, no? June Pride Month, I would actually go to a Pride Parade, no? So, and we even celebrate my gay identity, no? But, parang there's a parallel movement kasi, di ba? So while I was more and more embracing my homosexuality, by God's grace, I was also deepening in faith. No? So parang yung faith journey ko rin, it moved from parang intellectual, parang the faith of my parents, into like a deep personal encounter with the Lord. No? So I encountered Him through the Word. No? So parang yung speaking to me daily, through scriptures, ganyan, even yung sacraments, I enjoy, no? So, there's a parallel movement na pag ano, no? So, palalim na faith, while me also getting deeper and deeper into the gay lifestyle. Ito na nga, di ba? Parang I practice my faith, but I also living the gay lifestyle and celebrating it in fact, no? So, but how come I feel na I'm not happy? So, it came to a parang point. And parang yung siguro, I would define the happiness in the context of relationship with God. Whenever I commit a homosexual act, no? So, even if I celebrated my gay identity, I feel na my connection with the Lord is napuputol. Parang nawala ng signal, ng wifi, ganyan. Parang ganun yung feeling ko, no? So, but I want that connection with the Lord. No? So, I want that intimate connection with the Lord. So, I would go to confession, tapos babalik na naman yung signal, tapos magfo-fall na naman ako into sin, mawawala na naman. So, parang ganyan. So, until parang siguro it came to a point na mas importante na sa akin to maintain that intimate connection with the Lord na dire-diretso. No? So, yun. So, that was when the time na I realized I have to make a choice. No? So, either I continue in this parang intimate relationship with the Lord or parang really totally just pursue the gay lifestyle. So, that was my experience. No? So, I suppose I cannot escape my inner movement, yung interior movement ko, yung tension ko between the two. So,
balik ako sa simula ng konting-konti,
sure.
no?
Mahaba lang.
Yeah, medyo mahaba. And a lot of things happen in your journey, of course, no? And a lot of highs and lows, I would see, no? But were you in a relationship in college, the first encounter, or was it like more of a casual?
So, ako, my homosexuality was more towards casual sex, no? So, parang with strangers, no? Mas promiscuous type, no? So, ang thinking ko nun kasi, if I get into a same-sex relationship, it's like getting deeper into the lifestyle. So, I deeper in the sense that parang there's emotional investment, etc. No? But having said that, I think in my 30s, I also had parang 2 boyfriends. No? So,
okay, I was getting to that.
Correct, yeah. So, mag-journey ka naman doon. Parang syempre, parang nakapagod naman tong parang casual promiscuous sex. I just wanted to have one partner. No? So, so I had 2 boyfriends.
Ako actually, yung gusto kong balikan is throughout that journey, where did your family stand?
So I come, as I said, no, so I come from an older generation. So I come from a don't ask, don't tell generation. No? So it was perfectly okay not to talk about it. No? So hindi ko lang, kasi mga bata ngayon, it's different. No? So there's just a need to assert. No? So parang, at least in my generation, hindi siya issue. So it's something na, at least in my family, it's something na parang everyone can just conveniently push aside, no? So, and it's not a problem. I mean, hindi siya issue to me, hindi siya issue sa aking parents, no? So, I came from that generation. But interestingly enough, it was when I joined Courage that I actually outed myself to my parents, no? So, and to many of my friends, no, yung close straight friends.
You were how old around that?
So, I joined Courage, parang on my 40th birthday. Parang just before my 41st birthday. So, literally as 40 years in the desert.
Oo nga.
So, yan. So, just before my 41st birthday. So,
Parang gift na rin sa sarili, I think.
yeah.
Yung
So,
timing.
when I joined Courage, ganyan, tapos parang I felt na I wanted just to dedicate myself to this work, no? So, yun. So, I decided to take a sabbatical. So, from corporate life. Of course, I had to tell my parents because I was the breadwinner, no? So, sabi ko lang, parang gusto ko na mag-resign. I want to do work. I got involved in Courage, which is the Catholic Apostolate for LGBT persons. Ganun, dire-diretso lang. No? So, parang very casual, ano. So, then suddenly na-realize na, okay, yung parang ganun. So, ayun, nanay ko lahat ng, a member yan ng Courage. Since then, kahit yung mga relatives ko, parang,
So, it was an okay conversation.
yeah.
Parang hindi siya big deal.
Yes.
Like
na
how it is now.
pinagdaanan.
Yeah.
Or at least how it was an experience for Edwin.
Edwin.
Kasi I would assume for a lot of our, like the youth right now and different LGBT community, parang iba-iba rin talaga yung pinagdaanan.
Yeah.
Diba, na stories nila. Actually, gusto ko rin balikan, ang dami natin binabalikan.
It was a good journey.
But you mentioned that there's a huge difference in especially in the context of the LGBT back then in your time, mga 90s. And of course, siguro throughout the years, nakita mo rin siya nag-iba. Like how the landscape of our society related with the LGBT community. Like, would you have any or hindi naman siguro comparisons, but like just some insights on how the community back then was and how it is to right now?
I think generally, so I'm by no means an expert, but generally, as a personal observation, talagang, I suppose the LGBT movement became sharper, no? So more intense yung kanilang clamor, no, through the years. And I suppose they became bolder and now, no, they enjoy relatively more popular support back then, no? So,
Do you see any contradicting views from Courage and also LGBTQIA plus community?
for sure, no, there are several, no? So, I think yung very first point, and which is also what the church teaches, is yung sense of identity, no? So, yung identity ng tao, I mean, based on Christian anthropology, the personhood is always bigger than, parang kung yung personhood of a person is parang always the fundamental and bigger, no, or more holistic. No? So, what the LGBT movement is doing, or what it proposes in gender ideology, is that our personhood is reduced to our sexual attraction or to our gender identity. No? So, nangyayari, halimbawa ako male, I'm attracted to another male, my personhood is based on my being gay. No? So, parang kumbaga mas naging mahalaga or mas malaki yung same-sex attraction ko, and it trumps my personhood. Diba? So parang, whereas the teaching of the church on Christian anthropology na yung personhood ko, who is Edwin, yes, parang same-sex attraction is a powerful part of who I am, but who Edwin is always bigger than my sexual attraction. So that's a very clear difference in perspective.
Was it ever a question of, I can get rid of attraction so I don't have to identify myself by that attraction? Kasi di ba Courage would also pursue like chastity, for example. So,
actually, hindi naman. So ako, I speak, siguro ito, kasi I can confidently say this because it was really part of my journey. No? So, as I said, I was born and raised a Catholic. I knew the Catholic teaching even when I was doing homosexual activities. No? So, alam ko na it is wrong. No? So, even if I was celebrating my being gay. No? So, alam ko na hindi ako pwede mag-communion, for example. No? So, and then I will go to confession. No? So, to the best of my abilities, when I was celebrating my gay identity, I also wanted to be faithful to the teachings of the church. No? Kasi parang I knew that. No? But during that time, because I identified myself as gay, parang any attempt on my part to be faithful to the teachings of the church is a suppression. So, or is an attempt of parang pinipigilan ko kung sino ako. Kasi bakla nga ako, di ba? So, dahil bakla ako, dapat namamakla ako, di ba? I mean, obviously, no? So yun, nahihirapan ako. But thankfully for me, so another priest, parang in spiritual direction, the very first time I outed myself about my struggle with homosexuality. Sabi sa kanya, Father, my problem is that I'm gay, I'm homosexual. Ang sinabi niya sa akin was, Edwin, you're not gay, you're a son of God. So, nung sinabi niya sa akin yun, son of God, parang na-realize ko, wait, ano ba ginagawa ng son of God? No? Because I'm a son of God, I can actually be faithful to the teachings of the church. I can actually grow in virtues, but not feel myself being deprived. No? So, parang hindi, it's, yun, yung, because this is what a son of God does. No? A son of God strives, diba, to grow in virtues. A son of God strives to be faithful to the teachings of the church. No? So, parang kung mga nawala yung block na yon, no? So, kaya nga, very critical yung sense of identity. No? So, at least I can speak from my own experience. No? So, when I used to identify myself as gay, to accept the Catholic teaching was very difficult for me. No? Kasi, parang, feeling ko, pinipigilan mo kung sino ako, di ba? Pero kasi, the thing is, I'm not gay per se, di ba? So, I am a son of God who happens to have same-sex attraction. That makes a world of difference. No? So, in terms of possibilities, in terms of option.
Yeah, I think that's a huge insight, especially to right now. There's a growing stigma na to be LGBT, parang ang hirap na magkaroon ka ng faith or maging part ka ng Catholic community. O parang nagiging, kasi nga, if you were to really have your sexuality defined like kung sino ka na, parang nagkaka-blockages nga dun sa mga iba pang aspects in your life, which are also very important. And gusto ko lang i-catch yung sinabi mo, Edwin, na parang I felt like there was also a decision, an understanding that parang, okay, as you were living this certain kind of lifestyle, you also still realize that having faith and acting on that faith is still also as important to you. And that meant like leaving certain things in your life as well. Parang maganda palagi na may ganitong discussions actually. Lalo na sa
understanding
faith natin.
The journey, no? And nakita ko with how you were also explaining earlier that the foundation of that is the teachings you were raised to have. Na were vital, I think, in the process. And it was raised by, of course, your family. So, I'm seeing how important it is to get that support, that foundation.
Yeah.
From the family. That, you know, of course, in this journey for LGBTQIA plus community, that it's very vital. Na nowadays, it's really not a default thing that you get. I think the easy conversation he had was, parang medyo swerte na lang din na it wasn't a difficult sit-down, no?
Actually, yung pumasok din na question sa akin is, was there, in your journey of same-sex attraction and as you mentioned, being a gay man, like, was there an experience of discrimination also?
So, I think, while it was for sure not 100% perfect, I would generally describe my journey in life as parang siguro medyo swerte, parang ganun. Parang I felt that I was dealt a good hand, so to speak. So, even when I was gay in an all-boys Catholic school, syempre may tuksuhan. I mean, it is true of all Catholic boys. It's true of boys at certain ages, no? So, alaskahan naman, no? So, syempre, ganun. But I wouldn't consider it na parang it was parang wounding enough na parang na matotrauma ako about it, no? So,
I think now that we're in the mention of, I think, the difficult part, no, being part of the LGBTQIA plus community, maybe you can provide us like your perspective. Kasi right now, diba, we have a Soju bill, we also have people saying they want to be called or referred to as they, them. The pronouns are even in the workplace, diba? They even ask you, how do you want to be referred to as when you're getting to an interview and then onboarding. So maybe you can provide like your perspective on that. Kasi there's also a battle of language there, diba? Parang now you can say, they is like having, like they are whatever. So parang it's difficult to marry that two things na yung language na tinuro is also going to be different, but then we also have that battle of equality and individuality. So you can provide your perspective on that.
Can I add on to what you're saying lang? Kasi parang I think generally sa panahon din ngayon, it's so easy also to be offensive.
Yes.
Parang just the slightest nuance in language can already make you cancelable or like
Yeah,
parang it can make you feel like as if you really intended to offend
Offend.
someone. Do you think also that parang yung that hardship in terms of communicating in terms of language and also understanding yung context natin ngayon with our LGBT brothers and sisters, like do you think that's helpful, or like is there a certain parang way to approach the way that we want to stand up for what is also good, like equality and ano, but not also wanting to offend people, parang ganun.
This is my personal perspective, no? So, syempre, parang kasi, parang definitely compassion, closeness, mercy is part of the gospel story, no? So, parang, let's begin with that, no? Pero, kasi parang I think we also need to distinguish, parang siguro what's happening in terms of ideologies and philosophies, no, that are being proposed, parang by various secular movements, no? So, maganda yung sinabi mo na words are weapons, no? So, I think it's typical of ideology to weaponize words. Siguro yun, parang we have to distinguish kasi between parang yung person, yung need for compassion, mercy, and closeness versus the danger of an ideology, no? So, and what it proposes, no? So, ang problema kasi sama-sama na sila, di ba? So, paano mo siya
Halo-halo.
hihimayin na ano, di ba? So, I think, so if we talk about Pope Francis is a most merciful Pope, no? So, in fact, compared to yung mga previous popes, siya yung pinaka-most vocal about showing compassion to LGBT persons. So he really goes out of his way to make himself known in this regard. But he's also parang a pope compared to the previous popes na consistently warned against gender ideology and its dangers, no? So even yung Amoris Laetitia, sinabi niya na yun, no? Parang it cannot be, no? So parang it cannot be na parang we go through life na walang distinction between male and female, no? Or there's parang not acknowledging that difference between the maleness and femaleness of a human person, no? So kasi this is dangerous to family life, this is dangerous to society, no? So we have to parang separate yung pastoral needs of human persons versus our obligation to also expose the errors of dangerous ideologies, no? So
Which I think is fair. No, we owe it also as like a responsibility to communicate that.
Oh, I think that's a very important thing to understand, especially for with regards to the Catholic Church. Yung judgment and all of those other things that follow. Hindi na sa atin yun, na kay Lord na yung mga yun, di ba? But to love with compassion. To love is to, yes, be compassionate, but it doesn't also mean that parang you break down your principles or the truth that you stand for, just for the sake of accommodating other people. So yun yung nakita ko ring balance. I think yung balance ni Pope Francis. Si Pope Francis pala talaga yung topic ng episode na to. Pero I think it's very timely kasi for our time right now as well, with the love that he is communicating to all of us and to our brothers and sisters in the LGBTQIA community.
Courage actually has a counterpart na community also, which is named as Encourage.
yes, correct.
This stands for the families naman to be guided, diba, in those situations. Na, I know your journey was different, but yun, as you mentioned, it's also different from other people. So, would you have any encounters
sure.
with?
For now, I'm the moderator of the Encourage meeting. So actually, Encourage is part of the Courage umbrella. No? So while Courage is a spiritual support group for persons with same-sex attraction and gender identity concerns, yung Encourage is the spiritual support group of persons whose loved ones are LGBT persons. No? So we have parents, mostly, no? So mostly mothers, mga siblings, di ba? Sometimes spouses, no? So I think we have to recognize that merong mga ganon. No? So spiritual support group in the sense na kasi kahit sila, syempre they love their loved ones, no? So they want to genuinely care for them, to genuinely guide them. No? So syempre confused din sila how to navigate through that. And it was even discussed in the Synod of the Family, no? So yung yung cases na ganyan. And in fact, Pope Francis included a paragraph on that in Amoris Laetitia. Pope Francis in this regard, kapag may mga cases na isang member ng family na nag-out or may homosexual attraction, such family should be given respectful pastoral guidance. No? So, respectful pastoral guidance, very, parang big words yun. No? So,
Yeah.
Can you break that down? Ano yung ibig sabihin nun? Oo.
So, parang respectful pastoral guidance so that the person with same-sex attraction will be able to parang discover ano yung will ni God in his life. No? So, if I remember the paragraph correctly. So, respectful, talagang pastoral guidance. So, you guide, but also respectful of the free will. No? So, yung freedom ng families and freedom of the individual.
How does those conversations go? Like, is it like may program talaga, like rigid?
Hindi. So, yung encourage is just that. No? So, parang we will just say we start with the prayer, tapos we start with the objective, yung 5 goals of encourage. And then yun na, parang magkakwento na sila. So, kasi yung mga iba doon, regular yung pag-attend nila. So, parang we do it once a month. So, magkakwento na sila, what happened the past month? No? So, with your loved one, so what was the struggle, what was the learning? No? So, ganun lang talaga, mag-share lang sila. But somehow, the Holy Spirit is present. Eh. So, somehow, yung sharing ng isa enlightens the sharing of the experience of another. Yung gano'n. Parang kahit ako na-amaze ako. Parang, kasi, syempre, nagmo-moderate ako. Parang sabi ko, paano ko kaya matutulungan itong mga tao? At the back of my mind, meron akong, alam mo yung very activist feeling, no? Pero parang somehow, it's the Spirit that works, eh. So, sila mismo, by sharing their experiences, na-enlighten sila.
So, it's parang session siya altogether. Akala ko parang hindi siya necessarily by family or by people. Hindi siya counseling setup, but more of like a support group, really.
Correct. Yeah. They share their stories, their struggles, and their insights.
Yeah.
So, and then may for now, naka-Zoom format pa kami. No? So, yung encourage meeting. We do it every first Wednesday of the month. No? So,
can I just say, napaka-witty nung encourage.
Oo nga
yes.
Like, encourage. It really makes sense how you want
They
to
go
also
together.
empower the families to love yung mga family members nila who are having same-sex attraction.
I think it's
Galing.
nice na involved sa process yung family.
Definitely.
Kasi nga, at least, also in our perspective from the FRC community, no, na we really do not neglect the value of the family.
Yeah.
So, it's nice that Courage was able to recognize that. Na, of course, you have that individual going through their own journey. But, of course, the family is always going to be there, having their own as well.
And this is parang siguro, this is the heart of the church, no? So, and even this is what Pope Francis says, no? So, parang they have to be accompanied. And the best place for them to be accompanied is in the family, no? So, but sadly, we all know, no? For most cases, parang mahirap for some cases na lang, ayoko, baka maipit ako dun sa most. For some cases, yung family, in fact, is the source of wounding, di ba? So, I mean, I think we have to that. I remember yung Francesco, the movie, naging controversial naman yung statement to Pope Francis, no? Kasi, I think it has something to do with civil, parang, so parang, nakalimutan ko na yung term, yung technical term. Basta parang, when Pope Francis was the Bishop of Argentina, he was okay to support civil unions. No? So,
same-sex.
But not marriage. No? So, yun yung distinction ni Pope Francis. Kasi ang konteksto ni Pope Francis, if you read the article, yung konteksto kasi ni Pope Francis is, because the fact is, gay persons are being kicked out of families, diba? So, pag kick out sa family, sino yung support system niya, diba? So, and for most of them, makakahanap sila ng support system with their partner, no? So, anong gagawin mo dun sa person, diba? Siyempre, kailangan niya ng emotional support, no? So, maybe yung most practical way to address that is to allow civil unions and civil partnership. No? So, yun yung kanyang pastoral perspective, no? So,
one of the areas that I also want us to touch on din, brothers and sisters in the LGBT community, they experience hurt from the circle wherein they were supposed to be feeling the safest. I think that's a main problem of a lot of LGBT persons right now. Like, sa family mismo, and karamihan, not to mention, hindi rin karamihan, siguro not to generalize.
kasi to
qualify, marami kasi at least in my circles, marami akong stories na naririnig na it's those families often are yung mga Christian and Catholic families. Siguro, this is where I want to touch on Edwin's experience in pastoral care, no, with probably yung mga different circumstances that you've worked with. Like, is there actually a proper way to respond to that?
Siguro kasi parang there's the event, di ba? It's the event of coming out, no? So, which is one event.
Yes.
Parang siguro in the context of a whole lifetime of family life, no? So, siguro we need to put everything in context, no? So, kung gaano ka-importante yung event versus yung life experience of the family, no? So, why am I parang making that point? We need to understand na family is the school of love, no? So, this homosexual attraction, same-sex attraction, gender identity concerns, these are all affective in nature, no? So, pinag-usapan natin feelings, di ba? Pinag-usapan natin affections, di ba? So, pinag-usapan natin love, no? Parang yung who to love, how to love properly, etc. No? Pero, where do we learn that, di ba? So, in the family setting, di ba? So, pero parang what happened, 'di ba? So how were the children raised? For example, what was the sort of affective formation that they got, no? So kasi importante yung affective formation, no? So ang tendency kasi ng average Filipino family when you talk about good parenting, will just focus on the cognitive, 'di ba? Yung matalino yung bata, nag-aaral, or behavioral, so yung good manners. Pero nakakalimutan yung, or maybe the affective formation of their children is not given as much importance as the cognitive and behavioral part, no? So
you appropriate your, parang, basically depending on the situation, no? Per
definitely. Yun ang, siguro yung challenge sa pastoral accompaniment kasi it has to be case-to-case basis, no? So, it's not parang one rule applies to all. Kaya siguro marami naisip kay Pope Francis, no? I mean, this movement of pastoral accompaniment or even Amoris Laetitia, because it requires so much on the pastor, yung the one in the position to accompany.
It's also you have to listen kasi. Like, nandun yung importance of hearing everything, quote-unquote, para you can guide them.
Yeah, oo.
Although it's more difficult, but personally, I'm seeing it na it's good kasi we're participating in those conversations.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Tsaka we're hearing more stories na, like you mentioned earlier, diba? There's that either or, pag like, homosexual ka, so hindi ka na pwede mag-church. Parang there's that battle. So parang showing that you can actually marry those two is refreshing. Kasi for the longest time, you mentioned also during your time, it was very different.
Yeah.
Like, and now we're seeing na,
It's also very different.
It's also very different. Hindi na
Very
siya
different
bago,
again.
hindi na siya weird. Diba? Quote-unquote. Na parang, before it was like, tabu, huwag natin pag-usapan. Don't ask. So ngayon, it's like, it's out there. Like, you can see it every day, everywhere.
Pero maganda yung sinabi nyo, na parang definitely, family is important. No? So, yun, as I said, no, it's a school of love. This is where we learn how to love. No? So, in family, by observing our parents, by yung relationship natin siblings, diba? Yung relationship of the individual parent. No? So, kaya nga, parang in his wisdom, no? So, parang pinlace talaga yung courage and yung LGBT accompaniment in the context of family life ministry. No? So, when Pope Francis warns against gender ideology, connected din siya sa family. No? So, sinabi niya na gender ideology is a threat to family. No? So, kasi ganun parang lahat tayo pupunta sa family. And so, if parang sa Fatima, diba, parang apparition, sabi niya, parang the final battleground will be in family, no? Yun. So, kasi doon talaga lahat.
Kasi as Filipinos, it's part of our law also Diba, the family code.
Yeah.
And I think as Filipinos, it's important yung part ng family. So, I think it's also, like what you mentioned, it's very important kasi yun yung nag-remain na constant throughout, no? It's the concept of family.
Ako, gusto ko i-highlight yung perspective that you've given, Edwin. Parang na-widen yung perspective ko when you mentioned about looking at a certain event in your family life, for example, compared to like how the bigger picture looks like. I think when we talk about LGBT experiences inside the family, maganda rin nga makita yung kung ano ba yung naging experience ng bawat isa sa family mismo. Like, how have they learned to love? Babalik at babalik siya dun sa sa love talaga Like, what's the most loving thing to do?
Yung sad part lang niyan, siguro yun na. And this is how, parang siguro to highlight the fact na family is important. So, Kasi sa Courage, di ba, we tell stories, di ba? So, parang through the years, since 2014, parang medyo faithful naman ako sa sharing meeting. So, I've heard many stories of Courage brothers and sisters na yung isa, parang yung dad niya was an OFW, for example, male to, so, and then naiwan siya with his mom and sisters, no? So, growing up, wala siyang male role model in his life, no? So, suddenly, so parang, paano siya magkakaroon ng made-develop ng male identity in that particular context? Or, for example, yung may nangyayari yung parang spousal child syndrome, no? Parang, for example, si nanay may problema sa husband niya, magkakwento or magko-complain sa son, sa favorite son, so si Courage Brother. So, itong si Courage Brother, parang he would grow up hating the dad. Kasi yun yung kinakwento ng nanay, di ba? So, and because si nanay masyadong close sa kanya, nadidemystify yung femininity, di ba? So, and then suddenly, parang wala na siyang desire for parang the female persona. No? So in many, no? So, in many stories na parang sexual abuse, sadly. No? So, parang, and to hear these stories, parang it's really heartbreaking. No? So, and lahat yun rooted sa family. No? So, kaya very important talaga na ministry yung strengthening families. No? So, supporting them, making sure that they make the right decisions every step of the way. No? Yun, so parang yung same-sex attraction, yung gender identity or gender dysphoria, parang it does not develop in a vacuum, so to speak, diba? So,
nandun talaga yung family.
Malaking
kasi
bagay.
always. Kanina tayo matutong magmahal.
Diba? Talaga naman.
And I think yung formative years kasi.
Diba? As we receive love, that's how we learn how to love others.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yes.
For sure. Parang,
Edwin, we talked about a lot of the LGBT person in the context of families, no? And we know that that's a very relevant thing, especially for a lot of us Filipinos right now. And siguro, since we have the audience of the FRC fam, we'd like to ask you if you have any advice for the families listening in, mothers, fathers, children, in dealing with this, yun nga, yung mga same-sex attraction realities inside our families and how we can navigate through them.
Siguro parang gagamitin ko na yung words ni Pope Francis sa Amoris Laetitia. No? So, definitely yung in the Synod of the Family at saka Amoris Laetitia, it covered yung struggles sa family. No? So, sorry, baka hindi ko maalala yung actual passage, but the principle is, what he was trying to say is, parang family, kung meron kayong problem, kung may struggles kayo, don't be afraid to journey. Don't be afraid to journey together. No? So, parang if you feel limited, for example, parang believe in parang the grace of God to see you through that struggle. No? So yeah, I think that's the na parang okay, nag-out yung anak nyo, seek to listen, di ba? Parang bakit siya, parang when did you discover, for example, or bakit meron siyang feel, parang that pressing need to come out, no? So, ano ba yung problem? Is he or she in a relationship? Yung mga ganun, just seek, no? So, try to find more and to listen and not be afraid to, parang siguro, to go through this together as a family. The second advice will be also what the spiritual director says, no? So, advises, para spiritual director of Courage International. Sabi niya, realize that your son or daughter is also the son and daughter of God. So, and because they are God's children, believe that God's plan is bigger than your plans as parent. What if na-disappoint ka na yung anak mo lalaki, parang hindi mapapasa yung family ninyo. So, maybe God has another plan for that.
Maganda rin. To listen and to believe that our children are the children of God first and foremost.
And I like the plan. It's like God's plan is much bigger. Kasi nga a lot of parents would come and have
yung
that
frustration.
Syempre, kanya-kanya tayo.
Disappointment na parang hala, ito yung future na gusto ko for you now. It's
Yes.
gonna be so different. But yun nga, I think it's also the trust that God has bigger plans. God, kakanta ka na. So now that you have your wise words, I want to ask you like one last question. Do you think same-sex relationship actually has a space in the church? But
wait lang. I think time's up tayo.
Yes.
So, napakadami nang napag-usapan natin FRC fam ngayon. And dahil doon, hindi natin tayo, bibitinin namin kayo, pero very, very light lang because tutuloy natin ang conversations natin with the next episode. Of course, still with Edwin here with us.
Yes, so dapat you should catch our next episode again next month, FRC fam. Thank you again for joining us in our show. Thank you, Edwin, for joining us today. Again, this is Chai.
And Rap, who leave you with the wise words of Venerable Patrick Peyton that
the family that prays together stays together.
and the world at prayer is a world at peace.
Bye, FRC fam.
See you next episode.